The ranking member of the Budget Committee in the House, and Judd is on the Senate. The man's a stalwart, and you're really well served. I hope you know that. I assume you do. He's a fantastic... But you're going to be picking, in large measure, who the next person who will make Barack Obama the one-term president. And let's make sure that that person is a person who understands this moment we are in, is a person who understands what are those principles that built this country, is a person that understands the difference in doctrines, the difference in directions. And so when you take a look at where we are, it is very important to notice that it's not too late, but it's getting to that point. And that's what I call a tipping point. We're sort of reaching, in America, a tipping point after which it will be very difficult to wrestle back the American idea to maintain, reapply, and reclaim these principles. What do I mean when I say that? 20% of our fellow countrymen right now get 75% of their income from the federal government. So they're totally dependent on the government for their livelihoods. Another 20% in addition to that get 40% of their income from the federal government, so they're reliant on the federal government for their livelihoods. A full 60% of Americans get more benefits in dollar terms from Washington than they pay back in taxes. So we're starting to get into this moment, this tipping point in America, where more people have a stake in the welfare state than they have in an entrepreneurial society, where more people are against reducing taxes and limiting government because it might compromise their benefits than they are about taking risks, coming up with ideas, innovating, and getting ahead. And so this is why this moment is very precious. This is why, because of the fiscal trajectory of our country, because of the mountain of red ink and debt that is befalling us, because of the debt crisis that we might have very soon in this nation, this is why we have to get involved, settle our intra-party differences, and put them aside and get this country back. Because this is the moment right now. Now, what is that other path? Can we reclaim these ideas? I mean, is it possible? Absolutely yes, we're America. Of course it's possible. We've done this all along. You know, I was in Kandahar 4 weeks ago with the 82nd Airborne at one of their forward operating bases. And it's just amazing what these young men and women do. It's really incredible, just the day-to-day that they do. And I was having lunch in a tent with a 20-year-old young man, a Menominee Indian from the Menominee Reservation in Wisconsin. And you know, he had lots of questions for me. You know, he really wanted to know about the Packers and the draft and what the heck's wrong with Brett Favre and, you know, all this stuff. And, you know, you see in Wisconsin, our pastime's the Packers, your pastime's politics here. And after, you know, I could tell he really wanted to get news from home because he hadn't talked to anybody from home in 45 days. And talked to anybody in his family in 45 days. You just didn't have the opportunity. So one of the best things I got to do is when I got back to Kandahar Airport, I got to call his mom and dad and say, hey, I just had lunch with your son, and that was a cool experience. But I asked him, well, why are you doing this? Why are you here? You know, you're 20 years old. You know, we talked about ice fishing and deer hunting and, you know, the things we do in Wisconsin. And he said, because I love our country and I love what it stands for. And I think I can have a great future in America. The Army's going to help me do that. And he had all these ideas about his education and where he wanted to go with it. And he says, I want to keep that. I want to protect that. You know, all the people who followed me, and he was really familiar with the story of the 82nd Airborne, the history of it. He said they all got up and fought for this idea. They fought for these opportunities. I feel obligated to do the same because I'm excited about my future in America and I don't want it to go by. And that's something else from a 20-year-old kid. Not really a kid, a man. As I got on we flew in these Blackhawks over to Kandahar Airport and got on the C-130, and a young Army major came up to me and he said, you're a Republican, aren't you? And I said, well, yeah, how could you tell? He said, I just could. I don't really know what that meant. He saw a handful of congressmen there. And he said, don't screw this up. You've got to get this back. We are all really worried about the direction of this country. You guys have to stand in there. You have to fight. We are out here fighting for you, getting blown up by IEDs to protect what this country stands for. Don't let us down. I mean, if that doesn't put a chill down your spine, I don't know what does. And so the point I simply want to make is it is not too late. We can get this back. And not only from a moral standpoint, from a political standpoint, but from an economic standpoint. Recently, I reintroduced a bill, components of which I worked with Grant and John Sununu on, which, by the way, I really miss John Sununu. That man was a fantastic individual. favorite of all time people to work with. Very smart guy. I put out a plan which I just thought was simply doing my job, which does three things. It fulfills the mission of health and retirement security, but does it in a way that gives individuals ownership and control over their own lives and these things. It pays off our national debt. Doesn't just pay it down, it pays it off. And gets our economy in a position not just to survive the 21st century global economy, but to win and shape the 21st century global economy. Now this is a plan, I call it a roadmap for America's future. And go to my website, AmericanRoadmap.org. The point of it is I've been able to put down real legislation with real numbers that the Congressional Budget Office certifies does all of these things. And that is this. We do not have to accept the fact that our government's going to double by the time my kids are my age. We don't have to accept the fact that we're going to give our kids and grandkids a huge crushing burden of debt in taxes. Look, if you're my age, if Social Security could pay me my benefit, I'd get 1% rate of return on my FICA taxes. 80% of Americans pay more in FICA taxes than any other tax. Our kids, our kids will get a negative 1% rate of return, and that's if Social Security could pay them their money. So the government is a bad deal the younger you are. The government is going to give you a crushing burden of debt, a crushing burden of taxes, and what the Congressional Budget Office tells us, this isn't just the Heritage Foundation or something like this. They're telling us, for the first time ever in the history of this country, we really know, mathematically, irrefutably, we're giving the next generation an inferior standard of living. We will be crashing our economy unless we act. And so what I simply want to do is put out a plan to act and show that, you know what, we can turn things around. And what this plan shows you is you can actually, if you act now, you can make sure that people who are in and near retirement, they don't have severe disruptions in their lives. So what we say is, look, those of you who are on Medicare and Social Security right now, those of you who are about to go on it, if you're over 55, those benefits are there, they're going to continue, and they're not going to be taken away from you. But for people under the age of 55, guess what? Government can't pay them to you anyway right now. They're not going to be there. They're going broke. We're already in deficit in Social Security. Medicare goes bankrupt in 7 years. And so we put together a plan that basically says, let's fix this, let's make it solvent, and essentially what we propose is a safety net. We believe in having a sturdy safety net in America, as Republicans. But we don't want a safety net that protects people who can't help themselves, who are temporarily down on our luck, to morph itself into a hammock that lulls people into lives of dependency, that drains them of their incentive and will to make the most of their lives to reach their potential. And so that's what we propose. A sturdy, sustainable safety net, but a system on top that gives people more liberty, more freedom, gives them the power to own things, gives them the same kind of retirement plan that Charlie Bass and I have in Congress, gives them the kind of plan that lets them keep some of their own money in their own account, not some privatized thing that they take to some stockbroker, but just like our thrift savings plan, so they get a better benefit. For Medicare, we basically say you can have a plan just like we have in Congress. You get a payment, you get a book of a bunch of private plans to pick from, just like we do. It works for my family really well. We'll let you have that so that we can fix this problem. And what they say, the actuaries, the bean counters, is it solves it. We make Medicare permanently solvent. We make Social Security permanently solvent. We take the crushing budget burden of Medicaid off the states and make that permanently solvent. And we pay off our debt. And more importantly, we take a chainsaw to the tax code. Because I got to tell you, this tax code we have is a growth killer. It is a jobs killer. It is a competitiveness killer. You raise taxes on small businesses, you do it at the state level and the federal level, all you're doing is just killing your ability to create jobs. And in this 21st century economy, when your competitors are taxing their entrepreneurs and businesses less than you tax theirs, guess who wins? They do, not us. Now, the world economy is not a zero-sum game where our gain comes at someone else's expense. The economy is a dynamic thing. It's a pie that grows, and it's not a pie that's fixed, where we divide up the slices and more equitably. That's what the current regime in place thinks we do. We need to get a growth agenda, an agenda